and howl about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business. And I have chosen you to preach this evangel.
For all my free market healthcare robbing, stock stealing, retirement fund fucking with niggas. Fuck your little credit card scam and jewelry stealing, crack selling, liquor store robbing motherfuckers. Shout to the homies, Carnegie, OG, Willie Randolph Hearst, Baruch, Rockefeller, the real Rockefeller, my main bitch Leona, pour out a little Louis the 13th. Scott Rothstein, Jack Abramoff, hold your head. My Rothschild niggas, let's get this money. I spend my day peppering America overseas. Pension for the workers, nigga, please. Embezzlement, etiquette, private settlement. I'm better with Confederate rhetoric from my mansion in Connecticut. Foreclose a big close out the tenement. I twist words like a speech impediment. I hope you got good credit, bitch. If not, better get a new job with benefits. While I play golf with niggas to get cheddar with. New money buys brand new carrots. My old money bunch of great grandparents. You got grills in your mouth, I ain't mad at you. I own every gold mine in South Africa. Thanks, baby, you made me $1 billion. Plus, I own a building for each one of my children's children.
And we are live. Welcome to Voice of Rebellion Radio. This is your host, Chris J, here at Voice of Rebellion Radio. Tonight, we're talking about the situation in Ukraine, the war that's been going on, and a little bit more. I actually have someone coming on into the studio, I believe. Let me see. Hey, you hear me over there on the other end?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oop. Let me put on my speaker phone. I forgot about that. All right. Let me try again. Let me see if I can hear you now. I got on the speaker phone.
Yeah, hi, how are you doing? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can hear you. I turned up the volume a little bit. I put on speakerphone. Nice that you can make it. Thanks. I know that it's really late, and I really appreciate you coming on here. But I wanted to get you on here because your organization, I believe, or over there with the Humanitarian Battalion of the UK and Ireland, does a lot to help the people of East Ukraine. And out of all the people that I talk with on Facebook, and people that are involved with to talk about the Ukrainian conflict, you've actually done something very big in order to help the people of East Ukraine. And I'm sure that some of those people are thankful for what your group does and what you've done your part with, and also the grander Humanitarian Battalion. You have your branch there, and their aid to helping East Ukrainian people. Remind everyone, the Humanitarian Battalion is not a combat group of any kind. They're not associated with the combat groups instead of East Ukraine. However, they are for the liberation of Donbass against the fascist regime in Kiev. Just describe a little bit about what your organization does over there.
Well, what we mainly do, we send humanitarian aid, as you said, to the people, not to the combat groups or to anyone associated with any military kinds. We send in aid mostly to the children, to the elderly, to the single mothers, basically to the all kinds of the civilians, because they are like in every military conflict, they are the most who in need, So we try to do our best to help them.
Well, yeah, it's to some of the most vulnerable people your aid provides. I mean, your group provides the aid for. In any conflict, one of the most unfortunate realities is that there's going to be children, elderly people, people, disabled people, all this kind of, very vulnerable people are going to be affected by the war. And they have the hardest time coping with the new environment and the horrors that are associated with war. What's unfortunate is that how little the Ukrainian war gets attention over here. And if they do get attention, I actually do scratch that. They get attention, but it's in it's in the effort in order to demonize Russia, to make it seem like all Russia's fall into some kind of Russian plan in order to annex Ukraine. And they'll talk really anything about the civilians that are affected by the war and the fact that our government, talk about the American government, if you can even call them American anymore. I just say at this point, it's the entity that calls themselves the government of the United States of America, provides aid to fascists and to the Kiev government, which might not be openly fascist, but they definitely act in a fascist manner, and they have shown sympathy to groups that are openly fascist / neo-Nazi, such as the Azov Battalion, who has been seen openly admiring Adolf Hitler, Stefan Bandera, which, if you're not familiar with Stefan Bandera, to the listeners, Stefan Bandera was a Nazi collaborator that sent a lot of, I think, in Ukraine and Poland, a lot of people were sent to their deaths because of this guy. And these people over there in the right sector and a lot of the more, what you could say, the more openly right-wing parts of the far right-wing parts of the West Ukrainian supporters, they like this guy, Stefan Bandera, and he's been like almost declared like a national hero in West Ukraine. It's very unfortunate. And with the history that Ukraine had with Nazism, that these people that now inhabit the government Kiev are openly Nazi, or not openly Nazi, but are that they are helping openly Nazi people, and they're warming up to Nazi collaborators and whatnot. And I say the only difference between Poroshenko and like the people that fight with the Azov Battalion is that just one seems to be more comfortable with expressing their fascist views than the other. Poroshenko almost tries to pretend like he's some kind of moderate democratic leader, but he's an oligarch who's found his way to become the leader of this country, of Ukraine, and he is helping people, and ultimately he's really in a large part coordinating genocide over in the eastern Ukrainian regions. So have you've been over to East Ukraine since the war started, right?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I've been there.
And I actually the other day I was watching on Nat Geo. So of course it'd be pretty biased. They had like a little like documentary about these bikers or whatnot that fight for the I think it was in Lugansk, or actually they were in Donetsk and they were going to Lugansk. And of course I thought he went to meet the Night Wolves or whatnot. He saw their headquarters. What do you think is the ultimate? Do you think this is? I feel silly asking because I know the answer. But do you really think this is any way Russian coordinated? Like Russia is using this some kind of scheme to take back former territory, or is this a legitimate uprising?
Well, my opinion, it is of course a legitimate uprising. The people of Donbass, apparently they just disagree with the way of the power in Kiev was took, with that basically blatant regime overthrow, because in mainstream media they like to represent it as a popular uprising, which was in Kiev in 2013, 2014. But of course it wasn't. The maximum amount that was one time in that Maidan, no more than 150,000. So how can such small amount of people represent the whole view of 40 million people country, And of course people in the East, they want to be closer to the Russia. All the production, all the life was connected to Russia. They have a lot of family members there, They have a lot of history. Actually, all Ukraine have a lot of history with Russia, back centuries.
Yes.
And so they rise up against the military overthrow, but especially it was the main reason for the uprising was, of course, the Nazi ideology that they took central and western Ukraine by storm, I have to say,
Well,
But
what happened was a violation of the will of the people is that Euromaidan, unlike what they try to make it seem like in the Western media, was pretty unpopular very quickly. the leaders of Euromaidan fell quickly out of favor. And right now, Poroshenko, enjoys, or you could say not enjoys. He doesn't have a lot of support over there now, and there's a lot of instability over in West Ukraine. So his time seems limited. And from the very beginning, people did not like what had happened at Euromaidan, which was essentially a coup coordinated by the West. Talk about the United States, and I would say even Israel might have had a hand in it, as considering that Israel gives a lot of money to Kiev, which is ironic because one of the things that Israel loves to talk about is that they love to call all their enemies fascist sympathizers or Nazis or whatnot, and they actually finance literal Nazis in Ukraine. It also, same thing goes to the United States government. For example, what was it, Vladimir Putin to Adolf Hitler, when she was the Secretary of State, they were helping. Well, actually, her role in the government, one of the establishment figures, that the United States government was helping actual Nazis. So it's like you better just shut your mouth, because obviously there's the hypocrisy. It's finest. There's no connection. It's almost being painted out in the media as such, as that Vladimir Putin for a while. It's kind of and that he's Hitler. He's the furthest thing from it. If you actually look at his speech, see how things are actually, when you look at things as they actually are ran in Russia, not by the spin that the media in the United States gives you. There's so much history between Ukraine, you're right, is that most of Ukraine was like a gift, you could say, from Russia to Ukraine at some point. There's only like a little small piece that's been with Ukraine for, prior to, I think, 1654. And then over the years, they obtained more territory. Crimea was the last thing. Crimea didn't become part of Ukraine until 1991, right? I think at the time of the fall of the Soviet Union. There's obviously tons of history between Crimea and in Russia. The whole eastern Ukraine region in Russia, they speak Russian, and the West Ukrainian government tried to ban Russian from being spoken inside of Ukraine. Obviously, there's a giant hate towards Russian people inside the people that run Ukraine, or you could say the puppets of the people that actually run Ukraine. Because again, it's like goes way further than Poroshenko. I guess one question, and it's the question that always comes to mind, is: do you think that there's any end in sight for this war over there in Ukraine?
Well, I certainly hope so, but from my point of view, the only end to the conflict could be if the regime, which is now in power in Ukraine, will change its stance. That's the only way for this conflict to end, because for the people who live in Donbass, this is the question of their survival. If they lost, they will die. If regime will stop war, Ukraine will stay, and maybe, possibly, united together with Donbass, who knows. But for that, the Ukrainian regime has to change. All these Nazi battalions have to, disappear or be punished or be jailed or something, Actually, if you allow me to back a bit on your words, you say that Ukrainian regime kind of hiding its neo-Nazi nature. I actually wouldn't say so, because the personalities like Bandera that you mentioned, the Stepan Bandera, he was pronounced a national hero of Ukraine by this regime. The monument have been erected all over Ukraine. The central streets in capital and other cities, which is under Kiev regime, are named under this Nazi collaborator. If I can just add to your listeners, if they would like to know more about Stepan Bandera, they could just look up in the internet the Volhynia massacre, which took place in 1943 in western part of Ukraine. It's during 3 days, those people, the Banderovites, they killed from 150 to 200,000 Poles, Jews, and Russians. So that's kind of people which is now been named the national heroes of Ukraine. So they're not really hiding their nature, they're quite open about it. The head of this Nazi battalion, the Azov battalion, Andrei Beletsky, he's deputy of Rada, he's deputy of Ukrainian parliament, so I don't know how you can call this regime not like they try to hide anything.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. Like I said, there's obviously signs. I mean, they're obviously shown some sympathies to the Nazism and quite open. I would just say that there may not the people in the government of Kiev might go as far as the Azov battalion, who literally carry around portraits of Adolf Hitler, uh, kind of prey on. In the West, the thing is that people hear the name Stepan Bandera and they would say, "Who the hell is that?" So they don't really think twice if they were to hear that Stepan Bandera was declared a national hero in Kiev, unfortunately, because they don't know who he is and how vile this figure was in the history of Europe. You know, a person that was responsible for genocide inside of Ukraine and elsewhere. I don't think he was just there. He was a high-level Nazi collaborator. And as well, yeah, and also this new government inside of Ukraine. It's not like we're talking about that something horrible could happen. It's already happened, and it happened almost immediately. I remember back in 2014, when I heard about the horror that was the Odessa massacre. There was like 40 people were killed, and some of those people were pregnant women. But then they like torch some building down or whatnot with just innocent civilians, right? In Odessa, which is like towards the center of the country. It wasn't even really in the more eastern parts where the heaviest part of the fighting was going on. But that's something the Western media didn't cover. The Western media ignored this horrible act of violence by an American allied government, or thugs working for that American allied government. I don't think it was the right sector, I believe, right, that did the attack.
Yes, you're totally right. Actually, Odessa is on southeast of the country, and that city which never was any fighting, never was any kind of rebellion. What happened is that there was people who are collecting signatures, have a national referendum on federalization of Ukraine. Now, at that specific day, it was 2nd of May. There was like big concert at the house of near the house of trade unions, and a large group of prominent neo-Nazi group, Right Sector, just came down to that group and just start basically killing them. Part of the group hide inside the trade union building, and these Nazis surrounded the building and start to burn it from outside, throwing Molotov cocktails inside of the building. When the building start to burn, they enter the building and start just killing everyone who they met. They killed, on the official number of the people is 48, but the people who was there, the trade unionists, they say it was at least 117 people who was died. So it was horrible massacre, and unbelievably, it wasn't a big story on the news. So can you imagine, in the center of Europe, 48 people get burned alive, and very few media outlets had a word about it. No real investigation took place. Ukraine even tried to establish like international investigative group, but that group ceased to exist in 1.5 years without getting any conclusion. And this story just getting swept under the carpet. And that's just horrific.
Yeah, it's horrible, and that it shows is that, and I will say, that it happened away from the main fighting war zone. It's not. I wasn't saying that it's justifies it anymore. It just shows that their terrorism goes all throughout Ukraine, and a lot of the people in West Ukraine are not on board with it, and because the ugliness of that movement is not just over in the Donbass, Donetsk, Lugansk region. But yeah, the media didn't cover it, and it shows, of course, their bias. Because imagine if this would have happened in France or something, or Britain, and what's to say that in France there's another. We've seen the coverage when they had the recent terror attacks. It was the Charlie Hebdo attack that was only, I believe, a few people were killed. I think 9 people were killed, and that got coverage for weeks afterwards by the guy that they said was connected to ISIS or whatnot. You know, it ultimately, if you look at the people that are in the right sector and the people that are over in they're in ISIS, they're really they're actually more connected than you think. Is that the Ukrainian Nazis and the ISIS and jihadism, as we know it, modern Islamic terrorism, both received money, both received aid from the United States government for similar purposes. In Syria, it was to topple the Assad government that they wanted to take out, and in Ukraine, they replaced a more pro-Russian government. Yankovic's government was one that would be more favorable for them, which was a very strongly anti-Russian government, which is Poroshenko, the current government. Both were used for regime change. Both also, you look at Syria. Syria is another way, really, at putting the pressure on Russia, because if they can take out one of Russia's closer allies, that's going to agitate Russia, and it's what they are doing really in Syria is provoking Russia. The proxy war. And Ukraine's another really proxy war that's going on between Russia and the United States, but the United States instigated both wars. And of course, there's the Israeli hand in both wars, which Israel literally directly striking Syria, as we've seen, doing all kinds of illegal strikes, and Israel funding these guys over in West Ukraine. They're the second biggest financer behind the United States of the people in Ukraine. Yeah, and that's the media doesn't cover it. That's the unfortunate thing, is that there's really not a lot of media that Americans actually watch that they can get the truth from. And I think that's one of the biggest things when it comes to this situation is the information war. And it's a little bit different than the Syrian situation, because the Syrian situation, Americans seem to know a lot about it, but it's all false information. It's everything backwards. So they really don't know anything about it. Their mind are filled with false facts about or you could just say lies about the Syrian war. Ukraine just not there. They really do not know what's going on. All they've heard is they would probably say, oh yeah, it's some weird thing where Russia's trying to take over territory. That's what a lot of Americans would say. And from what you saw in Ukraine, you didn't see any kind of like secret Russian hand, helping rebels or anything weird like that, did you?
Well, I'll be honest with you. Of course, there is minor Russian help. A lot of volunteers come to Russia. Me personally, I didn't see any regular troops there, but I've seen a lot of like war veterans, the Chechen war veterans who came to Donbass to fight for the rebels. But they were fighting there not for the subject. They wasn't even received any salary. They were buying equipment for their own money. They were buying their way to get onto the bus for their own money. Of course, let's be honest. Russia sent in some equipment, and we are very grateful for that. If not for that, the Donbass would be in ruins and all rebels would be killed, and all people who against Kiev regime would be thrown into jail or killed. But it's not the way as it portrayed in mainstream media, as a regular army fighting for the rebels, and killing all out everybody and influencing. Russia have very, very limited influence in there,
Yes. Of course, the Russians have shown a lot of restraint in this situation, because the Russian military could absolutely crush the Ukrainian military if they wanted to, and end up liberating all of the Donbass region. I think would be a very quick operation. But the bad thing is that if they were to do that, the United States would probably respond with some kind of horrific counteract that could potentially blow up into War III. So that's why Russia hasn't even thought about it, or if they did think about it, it was quickly dismissed. They've tried to make it seem like on the Western media that the Russians have crossed into Ukrainian territory. They've passed the Crimea. There's apparently satellite photos of Russian vehicles entering eastern Ukraine, which were debunked heavily. I mean, Russia's actually kind of laughed about the whole theory of Russian invasion into Ukraine secretly or whatnot. The whole idea of a a country's military secretly supporting a rebel group overseas to topple a regime, or to cause trouble in a country. Where that's actually happening is in Syria, where the United States military is secretly helping, jihadist groups, and also very openly helping the rebel groups over there. The moderate rebel groups, which are not moderate, they're all extremists. You can lump them all into one big group, really. That's actually happening, but it's laughable to even think that Russia has secretly invaded the Ukraine and that they are trying to take over the Ukraine. They've tried to make it seem like, and I've heard people even say it before, oh, they're trying to remake the Soviet Union or whatnot. When Vladimir Putin, in his own words, he said that the fall of the Soviet Union, anyone that misses the Soviet Union has no brain. Anyone, and then he also said that if they don't miss the Soviet Union, then they have no heart, or saying that they are not sad about the collapse of the Soviet Union. Because
he says something, if you not feel bad about collapse of Soviet Union, you don't have heart, but if you want to establish Soviet Union again, you have no brain.
Yeah, that's the quote. And how I took it is that he didn't agree with policy of the Soviet Union, but what happened afterwards, the collapse, was one of the worst catastrophes of European or world history altogether, because of how many people starved after in the 90s, and the shock therapy with Yeltsin, and the economy just totally practically collapsed. Putin inherited a very weakened country, and he brought it all the way back to some of the glory that Russia's seen in their past. Is that people talk about Putin almost like a new czar or something like that, because what he's done for the country is that he's brought Russia back to I would say in some ways more powerful than the United States. Their economy definitely has a better outlook, where we have the shaky petrodollar economy over here, where it's really just waiting for the massive collapse of the petrodollar, because already people are no longer trading the dollar or dollars for oil in a lot of countries. So it's sooner or later we're going to see massive economic consequences over here in the United States, already happening to some of the United States allies. It's going to be not long before it starts happening to the United States. Putin, I know in Russia he'll enjoy something like 89% of the people approve of Putin's job, 80%, way up there compared to really any Western quote-unquote leader. What is the opinion of Putin over there in Donetsk and Lugansk? Do they like him almost as much as the rest of Russia? Or, and I say the rest of Russia because they really are Russians in just to say arbitrary border between them, but do they like him as much as the people in Russia do?
Of course, it's a big sympathy for Putin in Donbass, but I would say they're not as much as in Russia, because people in Donbass think that Putin could do more. Now Russia could do more to help them. Not only in humanitarian stance, but especially in military stance.
Yeah, I see how that feeling could come about, because it's like what I said, is that we've seen the might of the Russian military in some recent things. Like, for example, what the Russian military was able to do in Georgia is that they were able to cause the Georgian military to be defeated in 6 days. So imagine what they could do to the Ukrainian military, honestly, if they tried. But the thing is that Putin and everyone that's high up in the Russian government, I would think, are not even close to the level of war hawks that the people over. They're not. I'll just say they are not war hawks like the people over here in the United States government, and are puppets of big bankers and corporations that benefit heavily from a war between the two, and this is why they instigate the war with Russia. But Russia, of course, doesn't want war. They've seen war, and not that long. A lot of people in their own lifetime over there. Some of the older people remember World War II. I mean, you only have to be 70-something years old. You could have been a kid during the war, and there are some people that actually fought in the war that are still around over there. In fact, a lot of people that fought in the total war. That's what it was. the war affected everyone, and they know what a war like that is like. Americans, really, there's no war in recent history that was like that for Americans. So I think that unfortunately, a lot of the American people have a little bit more callous attitude towards the war with Russia compared to the Russian people would never ever stand for their government provoking a war with the United States or any country of that size that could bring that kind of devastation in their own country. I've heard the number 27 million. Is it 27 million, or I've heard other estimates that were even higher. Like some people say it was like 45 million people were killed in World War II. Which one was it?
No, it was from 27 to 30 million people, including civilians and those who disappeared without a trace. Up to 30 million people altogether.
Still, we're talking about 27 million people compared to, or potentially up to 30 million people. Compared to the United States, they lost like 750,000, I think, in the war. It's like 50 times more. So it is almost laughable when people say, well, it's not laughable because how serious the matter is. When people say that the United States was the ones that had the biggest impact towards, were like almost the sole the feeders of the Nazis. And of course, is that there's a little bit more to the whole to War II than the Soviet Union versus Nazi Germany, United States versus Nazi Germany. The bankers were at play. There was on the Allies, you had people like Winston Churchill that committed mass atrocities against Germany, and it wasn't like the German people were held captive by the Nazi government. It wasn't they almost try to make it seem like that the German people were all willingly on board with this. Unfortunately, they were in that country where their government was in that manner, and then you also had war hawks on the other side, like Winston Churchill ended up killing like 100,000 people in one night when they bombed Dresden. It was just a all-out horrible on every side. And I'll say even how Joseph Stalin commanded that war, to say the least, was there was you can't deny that there were some horrible things that happened, and Stalin was definitely responsible for it. I mean, but that's for a different day. I feel like that's the thing, is that that's going to divide a lot of people who talk about that when it comes to this issue, because that's what they try to make it seem like, that this whole thing between Russia and the United States is just like the Cold War all over again, or something like that, or how they portrayed the Cold War to be, which is communism versus democracy. When Vladimir Putin is not a communist, the government of Russia is not communist. And in fact, the opposition to the Russian government, the ones that fight Putin politically, they're the Communist Party, the Communist Party of the Russian Federation. Putin is in United Russia, and I also have like the People's Front for Russia, which is like a broader coalition. If anything, maybe you could say that Putin is maybe like a moderate socialist, potentially, just because the economy is not totally privatized by any means, and there's like they do have universal health care, or they have free higher education for some. Yeah. Over in East Ukraine, did you see were the people's lives affected to the point where they didn't have any more of the basic basic functions were no longer met, provided by the government or whatnot? Were their garbage still getting picked up? Did they still have grocery stores open in places that you saw, or was it massive devastation? I don't know what parts that you visited, but I just wonder what scope of effect did the war have on the people.
Well, of course, now the situation is much better, mostly because the fighting is not so hard as it was. But in 2014, in the beginning of 2015, the situation was as such that people was literally hungry, dying of hunger. I'm not over-exaggerating here. There was no medicine at all. There was no running water, no electricity, no heating, especially in winter time. And remember that winter in Ukraine is like minus 20 degrees. It's pretty cold. So the destruction, especially of some parts of Donetsk, some parts of Gorlovka, and the city along the front line, the front line was so much devastated that people were supposed to live in basement, not only hiding from the shelling, but have to live there because at least in the basement they have a roof over their head, you know, and they don't have blown off windows, which would throw snow inside the house, you know. The situation was very, very horrendous, and especially of course for kids and for the pensioners, you know. And add to that the blockade established by Ukrainian regime, you know. Apart of all that they've been shelled by that regime, they've been blocked by that regime. Denied not just electricity and heating, as I said, but just water, you know. So what same government who preaches Ukraine united and will allow those people, what kind of sane government would do that?
Well, is that we've seen in other countries supported supported by the United States of similar level atrocities committed by them. The Ukrainian situation, one thing that seems to be opposite of the Ukrainian situation compared to over there in Syria is that Syria, it's a government that's anti-American, anti-Zionist. That's the one they're trying to remove, and they've funded these rebels in order to eliminate them. While in Ukraine, it's the government of Ukraine is pro-American, and you have these people trying to defend themselves over in the eastern Ukrainian territories from their troops and other thugs that are funded or helped by the West Ukrainian government. Now it's been it's been over 3 years now. It was about 3 years ago actually when the annexation of Crimea happened. It was like the first week of March 2014. We just passed actually the 3-year anniversary of Euromaidan when Yankovic was officially removed, and they put in and then there was the interim government with one lady, and there was the one guy. I can't think of either names. What was the acting prime minister?
It was Turchinov and acting prime minister Yatsenyuk. Those two guys who wasn't elected, they just uh, put themselves into the office and was sold the country until the bloody fake election when Poroshenko got elected in single tour with 60% vote, when like 10 or 15 million of the country didn't take part of the election at all, and Donbass was excluded from the election process as well.
Yeah. They took over, and then in March, they ended up having Poroshenko, who was elected and became the president. And again, it's that he's literally just like a billionaire that walked his way into politics. He doesn't have any like experience in public service. He's not from the military or anything like that. And what we've seen so far is a very corrupt administration. And another puppet, and that's how I see him. I don't see any hope. Unlike some people that see some hope in this guy, Donald Trump, that's now became the corporate spokesman of America, as I call it, the president of the United States. He just recently said that Crimea should be returned back to Ukraine. So I don't see much of a change in the policy between Ukraine and the United States now that Trump is president. There's a lot of people that had a lot of hope. I saw, like the pro-Putin groups or whatnot. People talking about, Donald Trump's going to totally change the relationship between Russia and the United States. I already see it falling apart, honestly. Tillerson might have went over there and met with Lavrov, but that's not really saying anything. That's the way that the United States diplomats will act, is that they'll smile in the face of, the Secretary of State. They'll smile in the face of whoever over there, and then they come back and then they talk about sanctions, to talk about acts of war against the same people. You had Gaddafi shaking the hands of Obama back in 2009, and then by 2011 he was killed by the United States or NATO and all that when they funded the rebels that ended up killing him in October of 2011. So it's like all this fake diplomacy or whatnot is not, to me, really any kind of indicator of how things are going to go. But what do you think, you personally, about Trump and the future of Russia, the United States, and also the Ukraine situation?
Well, honestly, I really hope that Trump would be able to change it, at least something, at least to make it not so fired up, relation between Russia and United States, because this situation potentially really could lead into third world war, and if this war will happen, there wouldn't be place anywhere or on the earth to hide, and at the same time, I think even if Trump wants to change something, he wouldn't be able to do much, because from my perspective, all of the establishment in Washington is against him. They sabotage every single of his decisions so far, So I don't really see how he could change it, what he could do to make the establishment his ally, not his enemy.
Were you saying the establishment of who's against them?
The establishment in Washington, the elite, the American elite, nearly all of them is against him. They sabotage every single decision of him so far.
Well, what I have to say to that, is that, you're talking about it over here in the United States, that, of course, the outgoing government or outgoing administration of Obama and all of them, they have taken in public a hard stance against Trump. The mainstream Republicans, McCain, Rubio, but Rubio and Cruz, they've kind of, at least now, they've softened their tone towards Trump in the last few months or whatnot. But of course, you have people like Mike Pence, that's his own vice president or whatnot. That's what you could call an establishment Republican. All these people in his cabinet that really wouldn't signal any kind of real change. But I don't really see that as Trump is. If Trump was actually hated by people that are actually in charge as much as he as much as some people think that he is, then I don't think he would have ever made it to the presidency. Because I don't think that we have any real say in who becomes the president, to be honest. And Trump actually lost by 3 million votes in the popular vote. They could have easily put Hillary Clinton in if they wanted to. And I say thank God that Hillary Clinton is not the president, because with Trump, at least people are very vigilant about the government and the horrible things that the United States government does, and how our liberties are being trampled upon over here in the United States. With a Democrat, it seems that a lot of the same people all of a sudden shut up, and they all of a sudden become pro-war, pro-government people. And also, Hillary Clinton to me, resembles the ultimate symbol of corruption in the United States. She's just an absolutely vile person with a trail of bodies pretty long. I mean, there's like 40,000 people that died around her in suspicious circumstances, and that might be, I think it's like 47. I don't know. There's been a ton, bodyguards to, and they all ended up. It's like almost like one of those lists when you look at it. It's really creepy. It's like the JFK witness list of all those people that died suspiciously, that witnessed the JFK assassination years after. Trump acted like during his campaign, he softened he said he was going to, kind of soften the approach towards Russia or whatnot. But what I've heard later is that he's talked about it. Well, maybe if they sign some kind of agreement with us, we'll take away the sanctions. I don't think that's how you treat a friend, is that you, kind of, it's like, okay, we'll take away this thing that's really affecting your economy and is really shitty. Really sanctions are really an early step to an act of war. Sanctions are acts of war. They're acts of economic war. That maybe we'll take it away if you sign an agreement. It's in a way, it's a thing that we'll take away this gun to your head if you sign this agreement. That's how I see it. In his rhetoric compared to his actual actions, and his actions in the first months, I don't see a consistently pro-Russia president. And I think the only person that of any real prominence that could have been a more pro-Russia and actually respected Russia and her allies would have been Ron Paul if he would have somehow made it past all the New World Order roadblocks to becoming a president. That's, to me, it just kind of sounds ridiculous because, how well they're organized. There's no way that Trump could have made presidency if he's actually against them. Not in today's world. It was a little bit different back when John F. Kennedy made it, and part of the reason that John F. Kennedy made it was because his family, the Kennedys, are one of the elite families. Trump's not from one of the elite families. Kennedy was, and also Kennedy was the first time it happened since the Federal Reserve came to existence. Something tells me that they'd be a little bit more cautious to allowing it to happen a second time. Putin, and also another thing is I think Putin and his current people have labeled their diplomacy towards each other as like a bromance or something like that. Like they're such good buddies that they're best friends even. That's how they try to make it seem like in the media as like an attack towards I think both of them, is to make it seem like they're working together. But really what it sounds like diplomacy. And it reminds me of the fact that, just a few years ago, Obama and, Medvedev didn't seem to be at each other. And we are back. We're bringing Sergey back in right now. And sorry, it took a little bit more than expected. Hey, Sergey, welcome back. Can you hear me? You joined the call, so that might take a second. But I'm back, and let's talk about the Ukraine situation. Between right now and what's the West Ukraine versus East Ukrainian conflict that's going on over there. And also, it took a little bit extra time because I had to put on the right charge, and it looks like now it's going to hold. Oh, man, this is a little bit, this phone sometimes, the technology is frustrating. I was thinking there was going to be something like what happened last week or whatnot, but yeah, it's been a great conversation so far. If you're just tuning in right now, we've had we've talked about the realities of the war, how it's affected the people or whatnot, and even talked about some a little bit of the historical anecdotes like about War II and why Russia is so hesitant to intervene in any kind of way between in the conflict, even though the United States has intervened in some ways. Even though that the United States has intervened in some ways, I think they've even like sent paratroopers over there to train their guys, train the West Ukrainian people. But despite that, the Russians have not, sent training. They've sent little amounts of aid. They have not done any kind of invasion or anything like that. And I was comparing also the situation to the Syrian situation because of the United States presence. Just one side it's on the rebel side, another side it's on the government side, but both it's for a similar agenda, and that is one, putting pressure on Russia and also eliminating countries that are anti-Rothschild. Now, I don't know what type of economic situation it had with Yankovic before Poroshenko, but of course it's one step. It's at the footstep towards Russia, and Russia does not have a Rothschild bank, and that's the one that they're ultimately looking at one day. Russia is the biggest country without a Rothschild bank. They're one of the few. With Russia, Iceland, Hungary, Venezuela, Syria, North Korea, Cuba, missing a few countries in there. I think Bolivia, they made some kind of announcement recently that they're moving away from Western banks or whatnot, which Bolivia, with the president of Evo Morales over there, they could have had their current president Evo Morales for potentially 4 more years, but that ended up a referendum, something screwy happened, and he lost by just a little bit. Evo Morales, his successor though, I think is someone competent and won't betray the movement. Though you have to sometimes look for these snakes, because you see what happened over there in Brazil is that someone that Rousseff trusted, Michael Temer, ended up betraying her and taking over the government, a parliamentary coup, and now Michael Temer is the leader of Brazil and is imposing pretty much a fascist regime on his people, and is quickly becoming a known tyrant. Same thing with, Macri was different. Macri was never in the left party there, but Macri is also installing a tyranny over there. And then in South America, and the situation over there in South America and in Europe, and all of it's connected really. Anything that happens most of the politics around the world are more connected than you think. And one of the things that are underlying, and I know that I didn't really get to doing it today, which is ranting about Israel, is that there's an Israeli hand in a lot of it. There's Israel, had a lot of involvement apparently in the Argentini attacks in 1994. Where there was a Jewish center was attacked in Buenos Aires, and it was the deadliest blast in Argentine history. Deadliest bombing in Argentine history. 85 people, I think, were killed, and apparently, like most of the people that did the attack have now been killed by the Mossad. Interesting enough, maybe as part of a massive cover-up. Of course, probably they try to spin that on mainstream media as to say that they were able to successfully kill these people, as they were hunting them down. But I think it was more of in the essence of a cover-up. Kind of similar to potentially the story. I think one of the 9/11 hijackers. And I put a quotation hijackers, so there was no actual hijackers. I think Muhammad Atta supposedly was killed by the Mossad. That's what his father said. Killed by the Mossad. I think he was the Egyptian native. I think there was only one Egyptian native, right? 9/11 hijackers, who this guy, I think he was the supposed ringleader, I think, the whole plot, and the Muhammad Atta, besides of course Bin Laden, but it was of the 19 hijackers, he was the one in charge, and Muhammad Atta was supposedly was hunted down and killed by Mossad. As part of the cover-up, because he actually, it's like 7 out of the 19 hijackers have been found still alive, and a lot of them in Saudi Arabia. These people that supposedly died when they crashed into a plane or the Pentagon or the hole in Pennsylvania or whatever, and of course they're massive holes to the story, so that's why they feel that these people need to be killed. Talk about the people that were behind the people that are actually behind 9/11 or whatnot. And I'm actually right now I'm looking at the call, and I wasn't able to get third drive back in, which that really sucked. And I'm looking at my phone. I got the charger in, and it doesn't. I don't know why. It's telling me it's draining right now, and I'm charging it. When I'm on Skype, I don't know if Skype just uses that kind of power. I've tried closing out as much apps as possible, or I just have Skype running. That's the only thing I have running right now, and still now down to 1%. It went up, then went back down. I just got this damn thing, and it's already doing stuff. Or I don't know if it just doesn't. I don't know if it's actually as close to being totally drained as it is saying. Might have to go off for a few minutes or something like that, and then come back on. Hopefully not. Well, anyways, that here at Voice of Rebellion Radio, we've talked about Ukraine quite a bit over the years. Over 2014, we've had some shows. I think the first time I talked about Ukraine, in depth was on a show built back in 2014. I've done, like, for example, I talked about the main three, some three of the biggest things that are really affecting the world right now and the situation in these countries would be Syria, Venezuela, and Ukraine. And Syria, of course, being probably the biggest out of the three. And I've talked about Syria multiple times. In Ukraine, both have active wars going on. Ukraine has had, you're talking about thousands of people have been killed, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands affected. Syria, hundreds of thousands have been killed. It's a question, when does this eventually hit the radar of the consciousness of the world about what's going on in Ukraine? When does this eventually, when do people actually start to care? And I hope it's sooner rather than later. I hope it doesn't, take more atrocities, like what happened to Odessa or whatnot, to finally open the eyes of what's going on over there. In Syria, it's the horrible thing that they can't just not cover, I guess. mean, that's why they put so much lies into the minds of Americans about what the rebels are doing. But I think it's also part of that they want people to get on board with it. They want people to get on board with a war with Syria. They go a little bit further than Ukraine because the United States knows they're probably not going to be invading Ukraine, but they know that they're going to be invading Syria. And I think the war with Syria is inevitable. The war with Iran is inevitable at this point. The United States is going to all lengths to try to spark a war between these countries. And across the administration, it goes from the Obama to the Trump administration. You see some of the same ploys, some of the same tactics being used in order to try to start a war with these countries. With Trump's administration, there was some talk that the situation in Syria would change, but it didn't. In fact, we ended up having people said that the situation is the same now. People have actually, that was what I was talking about. Remember a little bit ago in that Syrian Arab Army Q&A that was done, and those people are not any means the official like Facebook spokespeople for the Syrian Arab Army, but they're definitely they definitely seem to have quite a bit of an understanding what's going on by what's talked about on their Facebook page. And they talk about like the battles, in-depth stuff about the war and whatnot. Little facts that are really not talked about.
Hello.
Hey, Sergei, are you back?
I am probably, yeah. I hope so.
Yeah, you're back. I can hear you. You're back on air. Thank God. And I also saw my battery level actually going back up. I was starting to get a little bit worried there. I thought this thing was going to die on me, even if I had it on the charger. So it looks like we're good for now. You're back on the air.
Some underground hackers trying to disrupt us all the time.
Well, glad you. I'll just say that I'm glad that you've actually stayed on to this late. I mean, I know you're over there. By the way, Sergei Bardashov is based not in the United States, based over there in Ireland. So it's like what, for 2-3 o'clock over there?
Actually, 3:05, yeah, in the morning.
3 a.m. So yeah, very very good of you to stay on this late or whatnot. But I could tell you that it's definitely going to have some help to your organization, at least by getting some knowledge out there and also to knowledge about the situation out there, because we do have a decent amount of people do listen to this show here at UCY Radio. That's one great thing that's compared to maybe before when I was still on Blog Talk Radio, that I only reached out to some people, a smaller portion. There's definitely a little bit more audience here, and also this goes on other platforms besides just the UCY Radio site itself. The Humanitarian Battalion Ireland UK, it's a legit group. I mean, it's one of the few groups that I actually will give my money to, and I actually donate to the Humanitarian Battalion Ireland UK. It's one of the charitable things I guess I do, because how I see it is that these people they're being so affected by a war, and there's not even any kind of, there's very little, there's a lot of people that don't even know about it, so they couldn't even help because they don't know about it. I feel that that's one of the most important things about the whole situation over there is the lack of knowledge about it, because if people knew, people might start asking more questions and start demanding answers why this is going on. So you just got back. You were on a trip to Germany, right?
I've been to a trip to the Munich. I had a very nice conference there, which actually was at the same time, which is NATO conference. So we took part in anti-NATO protest, which was organized by German guys, by left-wing organizations. So we took part in their protest, and we had our own conference, which was attended by the representative of over the 15 countries. And hopefully, if all goes as planned, we will establish an international organization, which would be dealing not only with problems in the Ukraine, but internationally, you know.
No, that's very good. I was just mentioning, were you I think you talked about me that you were going to this conference a little bit ago. Was that on the was that before Gibby was killed, or was that after? I think that was on the 8th, I think, 8th of February.
It was after the conference was from 18th to 22nd of this month of February.
I admit when I saw that news, I was kind of surprised to find out that Gibby had been killed, and that's two now. There's Motorola was killed not that long ago, and now we have Gibby being killed, and also we've had we have the diplomat Andrei Karlov being assassinated. There definitely seems to be the powers that be seem to be taking action against Russia, her diplomats and her allies over there in East Ukraine. And also there was apparently, I see that there's been 3 other diplomats that died recently, right? Or no, 4 now. I saw another one died, I think in Greece, like today or yesterday. Vitaly Churchkin, he died. He was kind of well known too. About a week ago or so, had a heart attack right before his 65th birthday. I find that one kind of suspicious. I think there might have been a chance of poisoning, to be honest. What do you think about that? That all these diplomats are...
It is looks suspicious. I tell you even more. During the last 2 months, 6 Russian diplomats died. All of them seems to be died of different causes, but the fact that they died during such short period of time certainly raises some suspicion. Definitely. I couldn't say for sure, but I couldn't say any other time of history when during 6 months, 6 diplomats of the same country died. And I don't really believe in it.
Definitely is an eyebrow, that's for sure. That's exactly kind of like the stance I'm taking, is that I don't know enough to be like sit here on the radio and say that these people were all definitely killed. Besides, of course, Andrei Karlov, who literally was killed on camera. But I will go to say that it's very suspicious, and the fact that how developed the CIA biological weapons are and whatnot, that's definitely very possible that, for example, that Vitaly Churchkin was assassinated, might have been assassinated by some kind of biological weapon, and that the heart attack wasn't really a heart attack. It was just him succumbing to whatever poison they gave him. It's like when Hugo Chavez died, there was a lot of talk, it was inside the Venezuela and around the world, and it still is to this day, that his cancer might have been not natural. There's the whole talk of the cancer weapon or whatnot. So if they can develop, and that we know they can do it, it's a question whether they did do it to Chavez. If they can, give you somehow make a person develop cancer, their biological weapons are definitely sophisticated enough where they could have easily picked off, Churchkin or maybe even more of these people. And that's the reality of the CIA and intelligence. It's dirtier than even people can imagine. The whole spy game and whatnot. And remember, they acknowledged when the United States, they made a big deal back when Litvinenko was, even though he wasn't a diplomat, he was a spy. They said that Putin or whatever directly killed him or whatnot because he had information about the Russian government. But they almost try to make it seem like the CIA doesn't play these dirty games, that the CIA is totally wholesome or whatever, when the CIA has done coups, assassinations, and every kind of dirty trick and horrible thing they can imagine. Over there in Ukraine also, I saw Gibby, when he was killed, they had lines forming for his to say goodbye to him. It was -20 Celsius, which is like, it's not actually as cold in Fahrenheit. Weird saying it's actually -4 Fahrenheit, I think, but still very, very cold. These people were going out there. That's how adored this guy was. And they try to make it seem like on Western media that this guy wasn't, that people didn't like this guy, or didn't like the people don't support the rebels, that they're like the popular will of the people is behind Kiev or something like that. That's how diluted Western media goes.
Well, how could we say that? All you have to do is to watch the pictures and videos from Givi's funeral. You know, it was like tens of thousands of people, coming to wish him last farewell, and to say that people didn't support them. You have to be honestly blind and ignorant to say that. He was one of the most popular people in Donbass, if not one of the most popular people in Donbass. And to say that he didn't have support, no, definitely he did, and he did have a lot of support, not only from Donbass people, but I would say from the people around the world. Because what he was just the guy from the working family. He served in army only like 1 year and a half. And after that, he became one of the prominent commander, one of the most successful commanders. So,
yeah, the media obviously, well, they didn't even actually say anything like, Givy an assassin in our media or anything like that because, or again, our media doesn't even really cover anything that happens over there. But what they say is that the whole movement in general, that the rebels are, don't enjoy that much support by their, they try to make it seem like that the will of the people is being compromised, whatever, by the rebels. Well, it's obviously not true when you see, like tens of thousands of people going out to see Givy, say goodbye to him. One of the rebel commanders. The army is just deceitful. That's the thing. That they obviously don't believe these lies. I don't think. Maybe some of their more dumber reporters might potentially believe some of the stuff that they're saying, but I think for the most part, they know they're well aware of what they're doing, and that's what makes these journalists, or quotation journalists, people more despicable in my eyes. When we talk about people like Anderson Cooper or whatnot, that they know, especially Anderson Cooper, because the dude is like the descendant of the Vanderbilt, like Cornelius Vanderbilt. This dude's related to one of the richest people to ever live in the United States, and he also has ties to the CIA. So of course he knows this, but all the other ones as well. I mean, maybe not some random MSNBC reporter. Some of these people really do look like they're really that brainwashed or just dumb, really. Because I would say that it's not ignorance because they've probably been exposed to the other side. They just refuse to believe the realities. A lot of Americans, they don't really fall into the category of dumb. I would say when it comes to realities of situations in Syria, Ukraine, and other countries, they fall into this into the category deceived and ignorant. That for what they do know or what they think they know, they've been deceived, and what they don't know, they just don't know anything about. That's how the media works. That they give enough facts for them to take a strong opinion about something when they shouldn't take that opinion, and they don't put extra facts that might have them consider other things into making that opinion. They just give you the necessary in order to deceive someone. And it goes more than just American media when it comes to Ukraine and how their coverage is. Some of the worst stuff I've seen about the Ukrainian situation has actually been British media. And you living over there in Ireland, right there in the shadow of the United Kingdom, you must have seen this stuff. I mean, how's the media in Ireland about the situation over there?
Well, media in Ireland not that different from the other mainstream media. Just what came to my mind afterwards is the report of BBC. It was winter of 2015, I think. The reporter was in Donetsk, and he was reporting heavy shelling. And the guy on the microphone and camera said something like, "We hear outgoing fire, which was fired by rebels." And at the very same moment he said those words, the shell landed on the rooftop of the house which was near him. So can you imagine that the bank lies right there on the on the screen, on the live coverage. All you have to do is to find out the truth. You don't have to believe any mainstream media. Try to look multiple sources, and preferably not from mainstream media at all, if people want to know really what's going on,
Yeah. I'm so used to, over here in the United States that I don't even watch. I can't stand it. It's literally nauseating. Well, not literally. Sometimes it could be. I don't know. Is that stuff that they put on CNN is just hard to watch. It's so dumbed down and it's complete lies. And I've seen them literally before, like when people Gaza and over there in Palestine were getting bombed by the Israeli military. Uh, you have they have the Israeli spokesman over there talking about how all the Palestinian casualties were mistakes, or just going through like a script of lies, or that uh, it's all their fault. They were shooting rockets, and people actually believe this garbage. And you know that they believe it. It's they have people. If you believe Malcolm X said that don't trust the newspapers too much because you'll end up loving your oppressor and hating the oppressed. And that Israel-Palestine situation is probably one of the best examples of that in play. And it's also similar to in Ukraine, that you have people, a lot of the, liberals, I would say, in this country, that they have taken the stand of, heavily supporting the Kiev government because they believe that it's some kind of like resistance against Vladimir Putin and his imperialist policies to take over Eastern Europe or whatnot, and they end up hating the rebels, who really the rebels are the oppressed that are rising up. They're the oppressed that have actually taken a stand to not only defend themselves but to defend their communities. The oppressors are the Kiev government, the military of West Ukraine, which I've seen. Apparently, they get treated badly as well. These people, unfortunately, a lot of those people are pawns being played into a game, and they probably wish they could get out of that situation, but they're pretty much stuck. The treatment of apparently their own soldiers is not very good, and of course, the treatment of their so-called enemies. They pretty much labeled the people of Eastern Ukraine as terrorists. They've labeled the groups that are defending the people of East Ukraine as terrorists, and that's pretty much how they view the people in Donetsk and Lugansk as pretty much just like enemy combatants. Mainstream media is.
Well, we don't have to go that far, the Mr. Yatsenyuk, when he was prime minister not that long ago, just a year ago, while he was giving an interview to the German media. He was on German TV, don't remember what station was that, and he called Donbass people subhumans. So, what could be more horrendous? To call your own people, your own fellow citizens, the all Ukrainians in Donbass, by citizenship, and he called them subhumans.
Yeah, it's
What can you
not
made up of the others?
level rhetoric, and it reminds me exactly that this is the kind of stuff that the Israelis say about the Palestinians, and it goes to the same kind of mentality. Is that they it's that they want the land, but they don't want the people that live in that land. Is that probably deep down the people that rule Kiev now, they probably wish that all those people in Donetsk and Lugansk were just to leave, and then they could just take the land, and Ukraine would control it totally. Similar to how the people in Israel, the Zionists, is that they want the Palestinian land, but they don't want the Palestinian people. And they even talk about there's Palestinian or Israeli, like parliamentarians that have talked about the deportation of all Palestinians out of the country or whatnot, and putting them in camps before, which is literally like the same idea as the deportation camps that Hitler had, minus the extermination part. The extermination part happens through the bombing. That doesn't happen at the camps. That's the only difference between the Zionists and the Nazis and their plans of how bad eventually how it would get. To me, is that a lot of times these countries, like Turkey, with their president, Poroshenko, some of America's allies, and America's and Israel's allies just mock or they're just mimic the people that fund and arm them. And, is that they end up using the same kind of tools, the same kind of rhetoric in order to, brainwash enough of their people to continue out their oppression of whatever group, whether it's in Turkey with the Kurdish people that live there, or whether it's in Ukraine with the people of Donbass. It just seems to be all similar. And like I said, it's more connected than you think. Is that I think it's not simplistic to say that for the most part, it's really either one of them. Either your leader. Really, it's pretty simple. It's either your leader is a puppet of the bankers and the corporations and the elite of the world. When I say the elite of the world, these scumbags that have all this power and money. The New World Order, or your country's free from the New World Order. And it's pretty clear which countries are, which countries aren't a part of it. Russia being the biggest country that's not. I think that's why they went to such complex and so many ways they've tried to attack Russia, whether it's economically attacking their allies and many other things. As well, the media's went as far as saying about one of the things that they really spun was MH17, and they tried to put all the blame on the rebels, and they said that the rebels shot down MH17. Do you think that there's any way that the rebels could have done that? I think there's a question of whether they even could, and I know that they didn't. Could have been responsible for MH17.
If you want to be totally impartial, so we couldn't exclude anything, But one thing I know for sure, that many planes was shot down by rebels before in Ukraine. Ukraine knew it. And Ukraine didn't lock up the airspace about the conflict zone. More than that, the Ukraine diverted the same flight, the MH17 flight, more than 50 miles towards the conflict zone, So that's just the simple facts. Apart that we could not exclude anything, there's the simple facts, The many planes was shot down before. Ukraine was supposed to. That's the rule. If you have a conflict, you close down the airspace, especially if your fighters was shot down before, And that wouldn't happen if this Ukrainian military jets wouldn't destroy and bomb city indiscriminately. And if Ukraine decided put greed, because of course for the every flight over its territories gets a lot of money. If Ukraine decided to put greed over the safety of people, so who's to blame for that? In my opinion, in any case, Ukraine is responsible more than anyone here. Just because it should have closed the airspace, it didn't close the airspace. More than that, they diverted flights closer to the conflict zone. Could it be false flag attack? Of course, it could be false flag attack. It could be anything,
Well, with MH17, or a lot of the evidence, anyways, pointed. I think, in what I've read, I think that it was a false flag operation. And I think that and there was actually multiple reasons. And looking a little bit deeper into it, I think that for one reason is that it was a Malaysian airliner. I think they took out a Malaysian airliner. And I'm talking about they, as in Kiev and the United States, Israel, really just collective, the West. You could say I think they took out a Malaysian airliner because at the time Malaysia was getting really was starting to go moving towards BRICS, and as well, Malaysian courts have. There was a Malaysian court that charged Bush for war crimes, of course, in absence of him actually being there, but it's put an actual verdict of Bush being charged with war crimes. I think Obama was charged for war crimes, and a lot of the Israeli leaders charged for war crimes. So that was one reason. Another reason was to create hatred towards Russia, and I don't know how many the Israeli leaders, might not have been a lot, but I know there was definitely multiple Israeli leaders that were charged with war crimes in that Malaysian court. But and it was also towards the second reason was to create animosity towards Russia and animosity towards the rebels, and to potentially justify minor United States intervention in the conflict, such as sending paramilitary or instructors or whatnot, which they've done already. I think that there's a few. I know there's reports that paramilitary have arrived into Ukraine, so that's like your Blackwater or whatnot. And there was even like eyewitness accounts or whatnot. Pretty much the alternative theory compared to the mainstream media theory is that Ukrainian fighter jets were chasing the plane down, shot it down out of the sky. Uh, I think there was bullet holes that was found with some of the wreckage, which would show probably fighter jets chasing it down compared to a Buck missile hitting it. There was a lot of holes in the official story, but at the very minimum, yeah, you could say that even if the official story was true, is that why was this plane going through a conflict zone, and why is the Ukrainian, they're supposed to be responsible for the airspace, is what they say, was allowing flights to go through this airspace, especially through the conflict zone. But I think that it was actually that they shot it down themselves, MH17. I think even Fidel Castro, this is what he said shortly after it happened. Castro has actually been, he showed a lot of, throughout his years, he would comment on stuff that didn't really even affect Cuba. He was pretty bold about saying things how they were. He's also said that Israel was behind ISIS, Israel and the United States behind ISIS and whatnot. Stuff that, of course, sounds crazy to Americans, but the people actually paying attention, it's like, yep, he said exactly how it was. When it comes to, I just mentioned him because to put out a world leader, even if it is himself, and to me, he wasn't crazy. People over here in the United States might have thought that it was crazy, that the guy was a horrible dictator or whatnot, but of course, they got a lot of the mainstream media Kool-Aid to drink. Over there in the UK, they even put in the newspapers. They said Putin killed my son or whatnot, and talk about like one of the parents of the passengers or whatever, blaming it all on Putin or whatnot. Of course that probably was them telling them that it's like, oh yep, it was Putin responsible for your own son being killed, and or it probably wasn't out of it was manufactured hatred afterwards, or from earlier brainwashing, why they would say something like that.
Yeah, the media reaction was just incredible. It's like all the mainstream magazines and news outlets just got the command, and they go like that, and all start to pursue the same agenda using nearly the same words, in the articles. It was incredible. No one even tried to look up things, to look up facts. They all just like, it's almost like they had the ready story and they just waiting for the order to publish them. It was incredible.
Yeah, they knew immediately. That was what was sketchy about it. It was like, you always got to question when they know immediately. And that seems to be how it is. It's the fake events nowadays, or false flags or whatnot. Is that they know immediately who did it. It's like in some of the recent terror attacks or whatever, which what happened in Paris back in November 2015, where 100,000 people were killed, is that they already pretty much knew the suspects in a couple days. They also the night of, they already knew was like ISIS related, or the day of, or yeah, it happened. Yeah, it happened actually at night, so it was like the night of. It was almost immediately they knew that ISIS had done it, and then there was even reports that the people, there were eyewitnesses that saw white men getting out of cars that were probably the perpetuators. The band that was playing in that theater said that the security might have been in on it. I think that was, when I say false flag, I'm not saying that these people were all a bunch of actors. No one actually died. What I'm saying is that it probably was like a Assad or something like that, and they killed a bunch of people, and said that terror attack happened, similar to like what happened on 9/11. Is that it wasn't a spontaneous thing that happened by Al Qaeda. It was the United States government, Mossad, helping coordinate the false flags. That seems to be one of their specialties, is false flags, and bringing down the towers, killing those 3,000 people to justify enough outrage and hatred towards the people in the Middle East in order to start a war over there. And I think MH17 was just another example of false flag. Another thing is that in that is I saw there was one thing that the Malaysian airliner plane kind of looks pretty similar to the plane that Putin flies around in. There were some people even trying to say that maybe that Putin was targeted and they just missed. That was an attempt at Putin's life. I don't know how true that was because I think that there'd be no way that Putin could have been targeted that way. I feel like that via his airliner would be so secure that they wouldn't even try that. They would try many other ways, may poison him. And I think Putin being a former intelligence guy, that there is no way that there would I don't think they could assassinate Vladimir Putin, to be honest. I think there's other leaders that are a little bit more naive, more willing to accept, some of the more sketchy stuff, the gifts or whatnot. I think Putin's the kind of guy. I hear that he brings his own water, brings his own food to places.
Well, every single president does it, not only Putin, and you don't have to be ex-KGB officer to do that. Obama have the same. Every single president on earth, if he wants to stay safe, and his security service wouldn't allow him to act any different, So they all carries them, they all food, they all water, they all bodyguards. That's just normal, and I would be very skeptical of the story that Iranians are trying to target Vladimir Putin. They don't need to assassinate. In this day and age, and how would they put it? The level of alternative fighting. You don't need to assassinate person, especially the leader of the level of Vladimir Putin. All you have to do is create environment around him, kill him politically. That would be the main goal, because if you kill Putin, you can actually get the opposite effect than you hope so. But if you create political environment around him and you kill him politically, then you will get effect exactly as you wanted. That's, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, they probably. I already see what they do. Is that they? I've seen is that they've been building. They've been knocking at his door. Building up in countries around him, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania. They put the troop buildups, and they put a lot of pressure on him. They start a fire in Ukraine. They do a lot of stuff to his allies, and they target Russia not directly so much. The closest thing to I think direct targeting would probably be by the sponsoring of the jihadists in Chechnya. Probably the closest thing is that the United States involvement with those guys. But besides that, they generally have stayed away from direct plots against Russia. They've just, more attacked the ally Syria, provoking problems with Iran. Some of even the further, some of the allies further away, but those two, Syria and Iran, are, being geographically close. They put a lot of pressure on and have actually, tried to eliminate Assad. Talk about the potential invasion towards Iran, especially now the last few weeks. That Trump's put Iran on notice. It's came back again, like the same level back in 2012 when everyone was talking about there might be war with Iran. It seems like it could happen again. Fortunately, because they've tried to make it seem like that they're 6 months away from the nuclear bomb. They've been saying that since 1984. And Netanyahu have been saying it for 25 years. He's also the same one that said that if Saddam was eliminated, there'd be massive positive ramifications for the region. And not to in any way justify what Saddam did, but obviously there was no positive ramifications when he was taken out. In fact, terrorism flourished in the years after the Saddam's removal over there in Iraq. There's been more suicide attacks in the last few years than there's been even at the beginning of the war and before the war. There practically were no suicide attacks. I think there was none for many years in Iraq, and now they have thousands a year over there. One of the main things that Putin has done in the last couple of years has been a actual anti-terrorist effort in the Middle East. And it's funny how when he attacks ISIS, the United States actually gets pissed. They try to make it seem like they've done all these kind of like slander attacks, and I'm trying to make it seem like that he's not actually attacking ISIS. He's attacking so-called peaceful rebels or whatnot. The same peaceful rebels that apparently, eat the organs of people they kill. Yeah, that actually happened on camera. I remember about 4 years ago. These people that have been caught doing so many human rights violations, targeting the minorities inside the country, such as the Christian minority or the Kurdish minority, uh, and these people are so-called moderates.
The
It's not even.
one should only remember the couple of years ago, one of the commanders of Free Syrian Army, the so-called moderate rebels. If you remember that he choked the the piece of the body of dead Syrian soldiers, it just bite it with his teeth. So what can you say about these people? How moderate they are and how democratic they are, and how country would look like after if they would take over, if they win. And this is a pattern. Look what happened in Iraq, look what happened in Libya, look what happened now in Syria. And it is a clear pattern. It's like, they pursue not for the regime change, but always for the controlled chaos. Like the main agenda is not to establish, like say, pro that or pro this regime, but just to create chaos for the reason that this chaos would spread further away.
Well, the motto of, or you could say the MO of the New World Order is to create order through chaos. So that's exactly what you see that they're doing, is that they're taking over via the chaos. Is that in Libya that they were able to establish, that they were able to get the oil companies and whatnot in there, and start profiting off of Libya after all the chaos, and even though there's still the civil war and whatnot going on, now they're benefiting from the situation. They have been benefiting from the situation in Libya since the removal of Gaddafi. Was in Syria, they're getting close to I would say their major plan, which would be the removal of Assad. And it goes one step further than regime change. It's just creating chaos in general, and that's ISIS's goal. And now it's affected the entire Middle East. It's affected even North Africa, and going into Central Africa. Well, they have a different one. They have Boko Haram, but that's another manufactured terrorist group. All Al Qaeda, Boko Haram, ISIS. I think that they just put different names on the same thing just to confuse people, because it all comes from the same parent organization way back, which Mujahideen. The Mujahideen were pro-United States terrorists that were unleashed to fight the Russian troops in the Afghani government back in the 1980s, and they successfully eventually deposed the Afghani government, and that established a Taliban government that eventually would be deposed by the United States in 2001. But people with a very short memory span, as they do here in the United States, they don't remember that whole chain of events, but that's how it went down. Now there's another puppet regime in charge of Afghanistan, which are allowing the troops there to stay 10 years now it's 7 years. They extended to 10 years in 2014. But the one thing is that we do see how they unleash the chaos around the world. But the good thing is that we do see solidarity around the world. For example, we see the solidarity between Venezuela and over in South America and East Ukraine and the people of Russia. You see there's a lot. One good thing is we do see in today's world is, I think, is more solidarity between the peoples affected by the United States imperialism, affected by the New World Order. And I think that the people around the world are uniting in these countries, and in some of the countries that are still under control by the Rothschilds. The people are uniting to eventually topple this nefarious thing. As huge as this is, I think one day it could be toppled. One day it could be in sight, and maybe our lifetimes we'll see a massive shift. And I think that the tide somewhat has turned, with maybe potentially how their plans in the Middle East have been delayed. I think they were talking about how they wanted to do all the stuff that we're talking about they're going to do, in Iran and Syria. By 2012, they wanted that to be done. They wanted to have already taken out Iran and Syria, and that hasn't been done. So obviously things have went slower than expected, and I think that's partially because putting a stop to what was going on in Syria. They were about to enter Syria in 2013, but Putin made that agreement with the Assad regime in order to peacefully give up its chemical weapons back in 2013, and that took away any pretext for the Syrian military to leave, or for the Syrian military to be attacked. Going back to Ukraine, I got a question about what do you think is the future for Ukraine? Do you think that Ukraine, because Russia they seem to be kind of hesitant about allowing Lugansk and Donetsk back into Russia, and allowing Donbass back into Russia? Do you think that potentially maybe the future of Ukraine is just their own sovereign state, and they won't be able to rejoin Russia, or what do you think is going to happen?
Well, as I said, at this moment, it's very hard to say what could happen in the future, especially if we have all this tension between global powers, So the only thing we could hope for the better. The only thing we could hope that the common sense would take place and the main geopolitical players come to conclusion, come to some sort of a deal, and will separate the interest and the interest of whole planet. Will act not for in their own interest, but in the interest of the whole world. Because the future could be as bright and could be as dark at the same time.
That's true. I think that Ukraine, like you said earlier, it's so critical because if Ukraine goes badly, it could lead to a world war. That's an unfortunate reality. But I think that Russia, has played it so calmly and with a lot of restraint that it probably won't end up in a. I think that if anything happens, it's going to be definitely on the United States end. They would have to do a clear act of aggression in order to spark any kind of thing in Ukraine, because Russia has not taken any of the bait. They had a chance to potentially intervene in Lugansk and Donetsk, but it's been very little bit of intervention, and it could have been a lot worse, actually, the whole Ukraine situation. And that's one way of looking at it. But there's still, unfortunately, what's going on right now with heavier fighting recently. You look at Donetsk, there's there's signs of the war everywhere. Their airport was pretty heavily damaged. There's buildings damaged. You can definitely tell a war had happened recently there. And I think it's the same thing in Lugansk. It's been nice though recently, talking from a little personal perspective, connect with Andrei over there, and I'm glad that you connected me to him, and I actually have a connection in the affected region, actually in Lugansk. One of the great things I love about doing what I do is that I get to talk to people that actually in the places I talk about on radio. Venezuela to Ukraine to Syria, all those places have people. Russia have people over there, have people in I think I had one. No, the guy left Yemen. I think I had someone in Yemen. I think I do have someone in Yemen, actually. So it's great that in today's world that you can talk to people from all around the world. I think it's one way that I use social media against what they want us to use social media for, which is them selling stuff to us and keeping tabs on what we do on every bit of our daily lives. And also at the same time, they want us, using it not for activism. They want us using it for share cat pictures and stuff like that, and just general, general bullshit to be sharing pictures of our food or whatnot. That's what they want us to be doing on Facebook. What Zuckerberg wants to be doing us to be doing on Facebook. I wonder you said you've had some troubles on Facebook recently, something about your account being blocked or whatever. What is exactly going on with you and your social media situation?
Well, it's not only me. A lot of people, a lot of activists, especially who have, let's say, pro-Russian stance, have recently blocked, and only from my friends, about a couple of dozens of people get blocked for the publication that they don't even know. Like I received the notification from Facebook that they blocked me for 1 month for the publication that breached their rules, and they didn't show me that publication. I check out my timeline. I scroll down to the bloody year 2015, and I just all my publications there. It's like they block me just for nothing, just because they want to. And the same messages got a lot of my friends. They got blocked, and they have no idea for what. And it's when you try to write back to Facebook and you never get any answer. So it's just like press from another side, from media, from newspaper, from magazine, from politics, from everywhere. But we all know, of course, the stance of Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg, he says that he's politically impartial, but we all know it's not true. So it's really not that big of a surprise.
Yeah, I've had some problems in the past before with Facebook, but way back in 2013, I blocked from doing all kinds of commenting and stuff like that because of like I couldn't comment to public pages and couldn't like stuff, or I couldn't like comments. I couldn't do anything in the comment section. I guess I got it because I was trolling or whatever. I was going like on Stano's page, and I'd go on there, and say a bunch of shit about what they're involved with, and go to race. I went to Raytheon. I went to a few pages. I went even to a notorious Zionist troll site, and Facebook page, and I went yeah as well. So there probably was there was probably a few reasons why I got blocked, but it was for a long time. It was for a few months. But I've had the occasional thing here and there, but never like account being totally frozen for more than a few hours or anything like that. But I've seen it happen to other people. Apparently, they end up having problems, and not just like activists of a certain issue either. It's like activists as a whole. I think when you start talking about Israel, they really those people get targeted pretty heavily. A lot of the anti-Zionist pages on Facebook get targeted, and with the Ukrainian situation, I think they like to really target a lot of the people that are on our side, because it's one of our it's a very effective tool for us. We get a lot of our information out via the social media, because the mainstream media, of course, doesn't say anything, and not just the mainstream media, but I have to say, unfortunately, even like RT or whatnot, they don't really say too much. When they do say something about the war, it is factual, at least compared to the mainstream media. That when they say something about the war, it's total bullshit. At least RT, of course, being Russian media, says the truth about the war, but they don't really cover anything in detail. I've noticed. Maybe in Russian they do, but on the RT English, practically nothing. Sputnik, not too much either. A little bit more, it seems like. Where I get a lot more information about the war would be Fort Rus, which is a very much smaller media outlet that I actually interviewed Ollie Richardson, who used to be part of Fort Rus, back in December. And I talked with the person that I suppose is the founder of Fort Rus on Facebook, and another person that was connected to Fort Rus. Like, it's actually small enough where I know the people that are at the top of it. It's a small alternative media source. Very, very good for coverage about that situation and what's going on, also just in East Europe in general, not just over there in Ukraine, but for example, like a Moldova, Romania, and other countries over there. Highly recommended. And there's other sources as well. There's also like Novorossiya Today, I think, is the source. Is another one that
The
they talk
news front, Novorossiya Today, and as I said previously, if you want to know the truth, try to look at least a couple media outlets, because and in this day and age, there's no such thing as totally impartial, total independent media. So to know story better, to know at least things closer to the truth, try to watch many media outlets and preferably which has a different opinions. In this case, you would know more, you would understand things better, and you would form your own opinion based on couple of views, not only from the views from the one side.
Well, yeah, I've over my time of researching. I keep it. I keep an idea of what. Of course, I do what I read. I look at what I read and whatnot. Those sources. I'd say that RT, Press TV, Telesur, they're good for getting a basic idea of what's going on. And I say they're great for beginners. They're transitioning. They're getting off the mainstream media. It's good for that. But sometimes they don't cover stuff in good enough detail. And sometimes like Telesur, they're just wrong on a couple of things. I mean, I hate to say it, but if that's some of the stuff I talk about, like some of the social issues or whatnot, they just seem to just get things kind of wrong. But they are very good on at least getting a basic outline of what's going on in the world and the general shenanigans that the elite are playing. But you have to go to many different sources. You're right. You have to go to the smaller ones. I'd say that's sometimes the best media are not really known by a lot of people. It could be just some small source like the one I ran into, Fort Roos being very good, and there's other ones as well. And also, I do keep an idea what the mainstream media is saying, because it's like figuring out what the enemy propaganda is blasting out. You know what you're dealing with. You know what you have to counter. Because to me, there's nothing really factual that's being put out in the mainstream media. And if it is something factual, it's something that means about nothing, or something that they can't lie about because people know the truth about in large numbers, and they don't want to get caught red-handed. The stuff that they lie heavily about is the stuff that they can flip people over on, stuff that people are, or stuff that people don't really know anything about, and they can fill their heads with misinformation, and they'll accept that as the real information. They'll think that's the real information. Yeah. Today's age, there's so much misinformation out there. The mainstream media practically is the misinformation. It's the big source of the misinformation. The people that control the mainstream media, the big source of the misinformation. Then, like your alternative media, you have to even search for that nowadays. I mean, you have Alex Jones and stuff like that, and what they say, and you have also these fearmonger websites that make it seem like that that war with Russia is going to happen in 2 days and stuff like that. That's not also that's also not really factual. It's not going to happen today or tomorrow. It might happen 10 years from now. That's what I think, that if a war between Russia and the United States would happen and be down the road a little bit. There's also alternative media that are just like today. I saw something on the People's Voice, which is like kind of a pretty fringe. I could almost say that they're starting to turn into like a coast to coast AM type website. They're saying that Donald Trump is some kind of time traveler or something like that. If it wasn't early in the morning, I would have probably laughed my ass off, because right now I'm laughing. I'm just thinking, they said that he's some time traveler named John Titor that's here to save the world from nuclear war or something like that. And they didn't put that like satire. They put that as like a legitimate story. So that's your alternative. That's the thing, is that you have to really sift through today and take everything with a grain of salt. But hopefully, people don't even really consider that for about more than 3 seconds about the Trump time traveler story.
Let's hope about that. Yeah, let's hope about that.
When I saw that, I was like, "Am I actually seeing this?" I was like, that might have been the most bizarre story I've ever seen actually on the internet. But actually, I've seen one before about flying eagles or something like that. They're come out of caves that are some sign of the end times or something like that. That is right up there in that category. It's been a great conversation, and thanks for coming on, and thanks for making the time. I know it's really late, but I really appreciate it. I know the listeners really appreciate it. And also thanks everyone for listening. Thanks Sergei for coming on to this show. Next week is March 5th, which is the fourth anniversary of Hugo Chavez's death. So that's what we'll be talking about next week. Is Hugo Chavez and his legacy, as I do every year on the first week of March to commemorate Hugo Chavez. So tune in, listen to that, and it'll be a good show for sure. Sergei, again, it's great having you. And
Thanks very much for having it. For having me, I appreciate it.
Yes,
Point of no return and nobody can stop it. Malcolm Little when he knelt before Elijah Muhammad, the comet that killed the dinosaurs, changing the earth. They love to criticize, they always say I changed for the worse. Like prescription pills when you misusing them, nigga. The Templar Knights when they took Jerusalem, nigga, and figured out what was buried under Solomon's temple, Al-Aqsa. The name is not coincidental. I know too much, the government is trying to murder me. No coming back like cutting your wrists open vertically. How could the serpent be purposely put in charge of the country? Genetic engineered sickness spread amongst me. My people are so hungry that they attack without reason, like a fucking dog ripping off the hand that feeds them. Immortal technique is treason to the Patriot Act. So come and get me, motherfucker, cause I'm not coming back. This is the point from which I can never return. And if I back down now